So, hello and welcome to the Cerini Nonprofit Leadership Podcast, where we explore the ideas, innovations, and strategies helping nonprofit leaders strengthen their organizations and deepen their impact. I'm your host, Ken Cerini. Today, we're diving into a topic that sits at the heart of mission-driven work, telling your story so everyone can hear it. Storytelling is powerful, but only when it reaches all the people we serve, right? So I'm thrilled to be joined today by Lisa B. Lewis, founder and executive director of Omnium Circus. She's a leader in inclusive and accessible experiences. Lisa has championed the belief that storytelling should never leave people out. She'll help us explore what accessible storytelling means, why it matters, and what nonprofits can do right now to make their stories more inclusive, authentic, and impactful. So welcome, Lisa, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So maybe you can start off a little bit by talking about what is accessible storytelling? What does that mean, and why is it important to nonprofits today?
So, it's actually vital. To me, accessible storytelling means you're reaching your audience. If you look around the world, the audience is not homogenous. Human beings are not homogenous. Every one of us is different. So, if you want your story to land with your audience, you have to know your audience. Who are they? They're not all one person. They don't all perceive the world the same way. They don't all receive information the same way. So to me, accessible storytelling is taking that into account and realizing that you have to adapt to your listener because they can't, won't, can't, shouldn't have to insert verb here,
Yeah,
adapt
so so
to
it's so it's
you.
it's it's kind of like adaptive communication. It's making sure that you're communicating across multiple platforms, multiple levels, multiple disciplines in order to be able to get to a point where people can resonate with the message you're telling.
Exactly. And even in storytelling, especially in storytelling, you're trying to find a connection with your audience. So, in order to connect with your audience, you have to know who they are and where they're coming from and where's the connective tissue? Where's the platform that you can both meet, where you can both meet?
Right. So, I mean, obviously with Omnion Circus, you guys have done an incredible job of ensuring that, experiences are all inclusive for people of all abilities. How does that translate into the way, organizations should be thinking about, kind of telling their stories?
So, what we've done with Omnium is very much a holistic model, right? So, not only are we thinking about our audiences, but we want to make sure that our audiences are represented in our organization. So, and I know a lot of not-for-profits do this as well, you should, to make sure that the people you are serving are the people that are serving. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
So you
Yeah. So
want,
so so the
you need
so
that
the
authenticity.
people, sorry, so the people within your organization, your board, everything should be representative of the communities you serve, representative of the people you serve, and everything else.
Exactly. You've
Yeah.
got, otherwise it's just weird. It like the connections won't work if you're coming in as a stranger who doesn't understand the culture in which you're serving.
Well, it's not so much that it's weird. I think oftentimes what happens is if you don't understand the culture, A, you make mistakes. B, you're not as effective in terms of reaching out. C, you're not going to be trusted the same way that you'd be
Right.
trusted if
Exactly.
you were, in essence, part of the situation that, or the population that you're serving. So again, I think, in order to get those perspectives, that's the storytelling component of it, those perspectives. I think that's where it kind of all comes together is in that, are the perspectives that you're bringing to the table the right perspectives for the people you're talking to?
And are they authentic?
Right. Oh, that's true. That's even more important, I think.
I mean, obviously every one of us has a true story and a true heart, and what you're sharing is authentic to you. Is it authentic to who you're serving? I mean, obviously if you're running a not-for-profit, it is, because otherwise you wouldn't be a very successful not-for-profit.
Right.
So, A, authenticity. And then B, I think really looking at your story and saying, okay, I'm telling this story towards this audience. When you write a book, you're thinking about your audience. When you
Hmm.
create a movie, you're thinking about your audience. When you're running a not-for-profit, you're thinking about different audiences. One is the people you serve, one is your donors. You've got a lot of different audience bases, your board, your donors. There's a servant of many masters, as it were. And
Right.
each of those audiences perceives information in a different way. And within each of those audiences, there are different ways to perceive information. So you really kind of, at least I really look at things in a more holistic approach. So, okay, how do you need to perceive information? On a very simple level, that's not even accessibility. Some people like more words, some people like less words, some people use email, some people use text. Some people need everything audio because their eyes, they don't take in
Right.
information visually. Some people need everything visually because they don't take in information auditorily. Some people have different processing. So with each of these, you want to make sure that you are accessible to each aspect of your audience.
Yeah, so you brought up a bunch of different kind of components there. So the first thing is you talk about multiple audiences, right? And having all these different audience or all these different stakeholders or however you want to kind of phrase it. Um, do you use a different message for each audience, or you're looking to create one messaging flow that really articulates or resonates with all audiences, or is it more targeted?
I use the same message. I express it in different ways. For an example, if I'm going to say to you, I'm going to create a circus that is accessible to everyone. The story that I'm going to tell you to relate to that might be a quote from an audience member without a disability and how they related to the story. Because personally, I happen to know you and I know you don't have a physical disability, a lifetime physical disability, i.e., you're not using a wheelchair. You can see, you can hear. You don't have one of those disabilities. So I
Kelly will tell you I have many other types of disabilities, but we'll
no
leave
doubt
that.
about it. Heard. But I would tell you the story and relate to you the same story, the same storytelling, but I would relate it from an aspect that would more authentically connect with your lived experience.
Right,
If I'm speaking to someone in sign language, I would connect another aspect of the exact same story in a way that they could relate. The story itself doesn't change.
right.
The messaging of what we do is bringing joy and connectivity, right? That's what Omnium Circus. It means of all and belonging to all. The whole point is that we're bringing a connection to people. So if I want people to connect, I've got to find a way that will connect with them, that will
So
resonate.
so how do you, I mean, there's a whole bunch of, and this is from a fundraising perspective. There's a whole bunch of studies that have been done that kind of look at the more you can target things to your donors, the higher likelihood that they will provide a donation to your organization because they'll feel, as you said, the connection or whatever. So how do you kind of target your messaging? I mean, I hear what you've been saying and you want to try to make it authentic and everything else. But I guess how do you target your messaging to each of your donors and still have this commonality in terms of what it is you're doing here?
I don't have a complete full answer. Otherwise, I would be so fully funded that I wouldn't have a problem in the world. So I don't have the final definitive answer on this. All I have is my best effort.
Right.
Um, but I try to just do as present as broad a range as possible
Okay.
in each of to create as broad of a range. So if I'm writing a fundraising letter, I would tell one story from this perspective and a different story from an opposite perspective so that I
Got it.
would be inclusive of both perspectives. And I make sure that that information is accessible to screen readers, to people who are hard of hearing, to, whatever way people need to communicate and perceive information, I would just make sure that that information is as accessible as possible.
Okay. Now you several times now have talked about different mediums, right? You've talked about visual, you've talked about auditory, you've talked about, so that brings up like videos, podcasts, whatever it happens to be. Um, what are the some of the most I guess common gaps that you've seen in like trying to put together a comprehensive plan or storytelling across all of these mediums?
I think the most common gap is that people will provide minimal access. So if I create a video like I have here, a talking head, right?
Hmm.
I am accessible to people who can see me and who
Hmm.
can hear me. We're in a studio recording. There aren't captions. So people who can't hear me, I'm not accessible to them.
Got
People
it.
who can't see me, there's no audio description because obviously we're recording a podcast at the moment. This isn't post-production.
Mhm.
But people who can't see me don't have a description of what's going on. Now, in all fairness, I should have started with, hi, my name is Lisa. I am a Caucasian woman with brown hair, big red glasses, a red shirt, and I am sitting in my office. Behind me, there are two open doors on either side and some posters behind my head. Above my head is a light, which is shining very inconsistently.
Okay. Yeah. So you paint the picture so that yeah, I got it. Makes sense. So
So
what yeah.
I've now allowed another door to open for someone to access the information.
So then there'd be three open doors in your room.
Right.
Right.
Well, the other one you can't see. That'll be somewhere else. We'll find a place.
So what are maybe a few simple changes nonprofits can make today to improve accessibility in their content?
Oh, they're so easy and they don't cost anything. Number one, whenever you put out a picture, don't use auto-generated alt text.
Okay.
Drives me nuts. If you've ever read it, a picture. Who is this helping? Describe it yourself. Look at the picture, close your eyes, open your eyes. It does not simulate being blind. It simply allows you to use your imagination. What are the most accentuated features of that image that you want to be sure that someone understands?
Got it.
Put a few pointers down. Yes, there's an official way of doing things. However, anything is better than nothing. And if you're trying to bring people in, any effort is better than no effort. So that's really simple, doesn't cost a lot of money. When you put links in your documents, everybody loves those hyperlinks and they say, click here. And the word here is a hyperlink. Well, what if I forwarded that email to someone else? The link doesn't work anymore. That person no longer has access to that information. Screen readers don't read hyperlinks. They read the word here. That person has no access to that hyperlink. Type it out.
Got it.
Really
Okay.
simple, not hard. PDFs are notoriously inaccessible. Send a Word
Yes.
doc.
I was gonna say that. I mean, you got to move those PDFs to something that's easily read.
Use a Word doc.
Yeah. It's easy to convert those now.
Yeah,
So,
it really is. It's gotten so much easier. There are really, really simple things that you can do that don't cost anything and they just take a minute of your time to think about.
okay. So then from a balancing perspective, right? You've got on one hand, you got your compelling storytelling, right? On the other hand, you got the compliance-based accessibility requirements. How do you kind of blend the two and bring them together so that it really becomes cohesive?
So the compliance-based accessibility is really only a guideline, and they're important guidelines. And I don't mean to diminish them by saying only a guideline, but it's a place to start. The ADA is a place to start. What you, in my in my perspective, what one would do is really put yourself in a place of thinking about if you could walk in another's shoes. Obviously, you can't because you can't live someone else's lived experience, but you can think about it. You can ask them. You can say, how could you perceive this better? It goes back to what we talked about at the beginning to make sure that you have representation from anyone you're speaking with. So when I want to know if this is accessible, I ask my to someone who's blind. I have somebody on my team who's blind. You've met him. You've met Brian.
Mhm.
So I'll ask Brian, Hey, Brian, is this accessible by your screen reader? Because even if I use a screen reader, I can't listen to words as fast as he can. My brain blows. I can't process that quickly. But he can.
Okay.
Does that work for you? If I want to know if something is appropriate for the deaf community, I ask my ringmaster who's deaf, is this appropriate? Does this work for you? Now, obviously, one person doesn't speak for an entire community. No one can. But if you ask people who are representative of the community that you're trying to reach, you take that much step further, right? You make that you make fewer mistakes.
I think the problem you have is, um, a lot of organizations don't necessarily think about these aspects of their website or these aspects of what they're putting out there in the marketplace.
Mhm.
I think it's a lot about, getting information out or, you know, trying to have the key components on their website that they need. And I would venture to guess that many of the clients or many of the nonprofit organizations out there aren't even, you know, compliant at a basic level, and
Let
that's
me
part of
put
it.
in a let me put in a spark of motivation. So in the world of disabilities, 25% of people have a disability. 90% of us will join that community at some point in our lives. It is a $13 trillion industry. If you're ignoring it, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. You're deliberately hurting your,
Yeah,
closing
I don't
doors
think, I
that
mean,
could be
I hear
open.
you. I don't think they're ignoring it. I just think they're not thinking about it, and that's the
Right,
problem.
exactly. And so this is an opportunity to think about it. It's an opportunity to really think about how could I improve, especially now when nonprofits are struggling, funding is so tight and it's really a challenge. How can you really maximize each of your audiences by including an additional 25% of the population that is at every single economic level that can expand your potential and it could help your nonprofit create an even stronger base and grow even better.
So speaking of things from that perspective, we've been talking about maybe accessibility, from the perspective of the audience, but what about, who gets to tell the story? Um, in what ways can organizations maybe make it easier for individuals with disabilities to kind of be part of that process of storytelling? What's the best approach?
So we just do it. If you have someone, I mean, it depends on what your story is. Obviously, for our story, it's very clear because our story is a can-do story. It's an I'm possible story. So I want someone with a disability who says, look, I have a disability and look what I've accomplished. And this is my story. If you're in a situation where you're serving food or doing something else that the myriad of things that nonprofits do, you might not have someone on your team with a disability. So whatever that story is, it's still going to be authentic. As long as it comes from the heart of who's ever telling it, it's going to be an authentic story. So you need to make sure that the people who need to reach it and for whom you're trying to reach can. And then you want a range of people who tell that story. Whatever your nonprofit isn't serving one individual, it's serving a group of individuals. Each one is going to have a different story. Maybe pick and choose a diverse, I think most people probably do this, I would imagine, but I don't know for sure. But you would choose a diverse base of from where the stories come from, right?
Yeah, and I hear you. And again, I think that makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, if you're a food pantry or whatever, I mean, you're serving individuals that have, the full spectrum of disabilities. I mean, everybody needs to eat,
Mhm.
so again, it kind of makes sense in terms of, the unique experience each person has and, how the food pantry has kind of worked within those unique experiences. And yeah, so I think it makes sense. And you're right. It's easy and just ask and make it happen. So you're right. It is fairly easy, but you don't think about it, I
You
think.
don't think about it. And that's, if I have one thing to say to folks, think about it.
Mhm.
Just take a 30 seconds of your time and think about it because it's really not that hard. and the gains you're going to get will be exponential.
Can you talk a little bit about maybe the importance of representation in storytelling, especially maybe the communities nonprofits serve?
You've, it's vital. It's absolutely vital. Otherwise, you're imposing something upon even if you feel like you're connected, if you don't have valid representation from whomever you're serving to whomever is serving, if you don't have that representation, again, you're providing a disservice to yourself, to your organization, and to the people you serve. If you're doing a food pantry, someone on your board has to have a lived experience of food insecurity at some point in their lives. That's what drives them to want to do this. Adversity motivates us. So you want to have that representation. I mean, it's essential. It's absolutely essential.
So talk to me a little bit about some of the organizations that you would identify as ones that really get it, that are doing this right or doing this well, so that, maybe the listeners can kind of hop onto their website or kind of go back and look at some of the work they've done to see what doing it right looks like. Well, we all know that Omnion's doing it right, but besides
We're
Omnion,
doing our best. We're definitely doing our best. And I can't give anybody a perfect score, but we're at least doing our best. There are always ways to improve. I was looking at Christopher Renano Reeve website today. That one is really neat. Disability In does a fabulous website. Disability in DC Metro does a beautiful, beautiful website. I did a search, knowing that question was coming up, I actually did a search, and everybody I saw did pretty well, but there was always more that we could do.
like what?
Um, Color contrast, a real easy one. If I put a yellow writing on an orange background, I can't see it. My husband has macular degeneration. He's losing his eyesight. That color contrast would look like a nothing to him. So little things like that when you're designing your website, pay attention to the color contrast. It doesn't have to be black and white. You can use color, but pay attention to the contrast. Pay attention to the language. Is it clear? If I'm speaking to someone who has a PhD and I'm speaking to someone who has a fourth grade education, I'm going to vary my vocabulary. So you would target somewhere in the middle, I would imagine.
Yeah, makes sense.
And
So,
each of them has value.
so we work with or a lot of people who listen to this are smaller nonprofits, right? More than 50% of the nonprofits out there generate less than $1 million worth of revenue. So there's a lot of small nonprofit organizations out there with limited budgets. What can they do to increase their accessible storytelling um, in a low cost way?
Awareness, do your research, just look it up online. There's so much research out there that is free. Accenture does a study. IAAP has a lot of information out there. Disability In has a lot of information on their website. Take a little, have an intern help you and feed you just the bullet points if you're too busy to actually do the research, which most executive directors are. Um,
You could probably also get AI to do a crawl of a website and kind of lay
I'm
out things. Yeah.
sure, I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can. Just take a moment and do some really simple research. Like, I process information more verbally. I'm easier to have a conversation with someone. If I have to write a paragraph for you, it's going to take me 3 days and I get overwhelmed. If I can have a conversation with you, I can give you the information right there because it's in my head.
Right.
So for me, it's easier to call up a friend and ask. Find someone you can ask a question. There are internship programs in the city, and I'm sure there are on Long Island as well. I know the city programs. There's a program called PI. There's New York City at Work. There's a lot of workforce development programs. NYU has one, Rusk has one, Baruch has one. There are a lot of workforce development programs where you can get interns for free that have that lived experience that can really help you with that perspective and do whatever jobs you need them to do as an intern.
Yeah, you just have to be careful that if you're using an intern that, sorry, putting on my accountant hat like I always do, but if you're using an intern, then you're not paying that intern. They have to be getting school credit for it. So just be
Some
careful.
are school credit and some get paid. It just depends on the
That's why I said
format.
it's either paid or school credit. Yeah, that's why I said.
Oh yeah, for sure, for
Right.
sure. And be upfront and tell them. I mean, there's no hiding. You are hired because you are A, good at your job, and B, have a lived experience that we don't have represented, and we value your thoughts and we value your perspective. You can be upfront. You
Yep.
don't want to use them as a guinea pig and say, oh, this intern said that, so we're going to extrapolate that out into the world. You don't want to do it that way, but it at least will give you a perspective from a lived experience.
Yeah, we've talked and it came up a few times where it's not so much that um, nonprofit organizations don't want to do this, they just don't always think about it. How do you change your attitude? How do you build it into your DNA so that this becomes kind of part of the thought process, or maybe it's not even a thought process, it's part of the norm in terms of how you operate your agency? How do you kind of ensure that you're constantly thinking about, that diverse storytelling and diverse messaging?
It is so much a part of my DNA that I can't imagine living without it. I I'm not sure how I would tell someone who doesn't perceive that how to begin to perceive it. I've always wanted to share. I always look at who who's receiving the message, how do they need to receive it. One of my first books was Howard Gardner's Multiple Intelligences, which I highly recommend to everyone. Everybody learns differently. So when I'm telling a story and I want to be understood, I cannot expect someone to speak the language that I'm speaking. I have to change to speak their language.
Yeah.
And then I don't mean English, French,
No,
Spanish.
no, no,
I
I get
mean
it.
the
It's
feel.
I talk to my management team all the time. It's like you can't expect people to adapt to you. You have to adapt to them. That's
Yeah,
what makes a good manager is someone who can adapt down to the staff that they're working with or the individuals they're working with to be able to communicate effectively with each one, no matter what their communication style is.
exactly. And it's the same thing with accessibility. You want to make sure that you're always thinking about that. And it becomes if you start, my suggestion would be if you start by adding 30 seconds to say to every message you're giving, add 30 seconds and make yourself a checklist. Have I reached these demographics? Am I communicating effectively with these 5 types of people that I'm trying to reach? Eventually, it will become second nature.
Okay. Where do you see the trends going forward in accessible storytelling? Where do you see things in 2026 and beyond?
I actually am very hopeful about it. Um, I'm actually very, very hopeful given the challenges that we're all facing right now. Adversity gives rise to creativity. And I see a lot of people coming together. I see a lot of people collaborating. What you do is amazing through the New York Imagine Awards. What you're doing, bringing people together, bringing us all together to collaborate in ways that perhaps we hadn't thought of, that because we can all support each other and help each other, because at the core of it, we're all working for a better world. We're all working for a place that we want to be in. We're trying to be the world we want to see. So I think more and more as people begin to work together, I feel very hopeful about the future. I feel hopeful that people are taking into account that disability is just a part of life. It's just a natural part of life. There have always been people with disability. There always will be people with disability. This is just part of our world.
Right.
And the more it's normalized and the more accessibility is normalized, the greater contributions everyone is invited to make to our world.
Great. That's awesome. We're running low on time, so let me just throw out one last question. What one piece of advice regarding accessible storytelling or storytelling in general would you give to people who are listening today?
The best advice I can give from your heart, be authentic. Don't make things up, obviously. So, authenticity, and then put yourself in the shoes of your audience and make sure that all of the people that you are reaching, including those with disabilities, can access the information and the story that you're trying to give. So, authenticity, accessibility, they partner.
That's awesome. Lisa, really, I want to thank you for sharing your expertise and for reminding us that accessibility is about connection, representation, ensuring everyone has a voice. Your insights on practical change, cultural mindset, and the future of inclusive storytelling gives nonprofits a clear step to move forward, which I think is incredible. And to all of our listeners today, thank you for being part of this. Hope our conversation inspires you to look at your stories through a more inclusive lens and think about who you might be leaving out and how to bring them in, right? So thank you for tuning in to the Cerini Nonprofit Leadership Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and join us next time as we continue to help nonprofits lead with purpose. Thanks, everyone, and we appreciate you being here.